I was watching a video just recently from a doctor who occasionally pops up on my feed, and he's a huge conspiracy theorist. And ever since the pandemic, he always professes that everything that exists in the world now is down to the COVID vaccine. But he's just produced a video based on a research report that I'm going to do an In Plain Sight episode that directly refutes this paper. It's one paper that claims there are links between COVID and cancer. Now, having lost my mum to cancer a few years ago, I find any of these claims absolutely personally offensive and absolutely ridiculous. And these are people who claim to have worked in medicine, who believe this, who believe that the COVID vaccine is rewriting your DNA. It beggars belief. I mean, calling these people potentially stupid doesn't even cover it. But this individual, it's a really good example of something that sounds highly technical and persuasive on the surface when he talks about it. But when you slow it down and walk through it clinically, none of it holds up at all. Now, using my IPC head and my nursing head, I'll just run through quickly a few of the things that the video claims. The speaker's essentially arguing, and I won't name his name because I never wish to use my podcast to do that. But this individual claims that lipid nanoparticles from the mRNA vaccine, COVID vaccine, spread everywhere in the body, everywhere, in inverted commas, and that they accumulate in your bone marrow and affect your immune cells. And he's saying, based on this article, it could lead to cancers, leukemias, your lymphomas, autoimmune disease, and that this spike protein's toxic and that it hangs around for long periods of time. And also on top of this, that the RNA is creating abnormal proteins via what he calls frame shifting. Again, I'm putting it in inverted commas because it's, nonsense. Integrates into DNA via contamination, and therefore the vaccines cause long-term harm, potentially including cancer. Now, granted, it's a layered argument, and each step that he goes through builds on the previous one and escalates it to the point it sounds more and more concerning. But if you walk through it clinically and scientifically as a nurse, none of it stands up. So it goes everywhere in the body. Partially true, but completely misrepresented by what he's saying. After injection, LMPs do distribute beyond the injection site. Of course they do. They don't say in the point where the needle has penetrated your skin. And they're taken up by your muscle cells, parts of your bloodstream, your lymphatic system. Because in this case, immune activation, that's the goal of a COVID vaccine, for argument's sake. And then he says small amounts can reach other tissues, but they're rapidly cleared and they don't accumulate indefinitely. This isn't me saying this. This is decades and decades of research into not just vaccinations, but injections as well. They rapidly clear and they don't accumulate in particular areas indefinitely. They just don't. There has never been, as we're having this conversation, a single piece of research that supports that claim. Now, his key point is distribution equals a harmful presence. Nonsense. He then goes on to say they go into bone marrow and affect immune cells. And this is where he's really stretching his narrative. There is no robust clinical evidence that mRNA vaccines damage your bone marrow or affect blood cell production in a carcinogenic way. No evidence at all. People have been claiming this since the pandemic. It's absolute bullshit. And when you ask people to provide their evidence, you 9 times out of 10 get someone who says, go and do the research yourself, which means they have no research. They're just basing it on what someone else told them. Because if they had research and they'd done research, and in my long form Substack article, there will be links to the research so you can check it for yourselves. 9 times out of 10, when they say go and find the research for yourself, it's because there is no research. They're just basing it on what someone's told them. So damage to your bone marrow and blood cell production that becomes carcinogenic from a COVID vaccine is bullshit. Real world data, and this is millions and millions of patients, show no sign of increased leukemia, lymphoma, bone marrow failure, or cancer, or any kind of failure syndromes due to a COVID vaccine. And as an infection control nurse, I appreciate this because think about it logically. If it was happening at scale, we would have already seen it in surveillance data. We would have already seen it. There is no surveillance data. Nobody's collected any surveillance data, not because they can't be bothered, because it doesn't exist. Am I saying the COVID vaccine hasn't had adverse effects? No. All vaccines have adverse effects. I'm a pro-vaxxer, but when it comes to the COVID vaccine, I still would like to see more evidence because it is relatively new in the grand scheme of vaccinations. You know, it's literally a few years old. It didn't just come out of the ether. They'd been trying to create COVID vaccines for coronavirus vaccines for the common cold for decades. And have never been able to come up with one. This was just the next step. And granted, they got ridiculous amounts of money thrown at them and yada, 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 because of the pandemic. But it wasn't just designed from a blank slate. They took what they'd already been researching for decades and then took the next logical step, granted with, as I said, a lot of funding. But it doesn't, there's never been any evidence that it causes cancer. I do feel it needs a little bit more work. I would like to see a bit more research. I had my COVID vaccine. I haven't had my boosters because I don't feel that I need them. I have had COVID. My wife's had COVID. I've worked around people who've had COVID. As an infection control nurse, having spent time in microbiology labs and things, I've seen how it grows, how it's cultured, how it's sampled, how it's processed. It's an absolute, genuine virus. And it's a novel virus, which means it's relatively new in the grand scheme of things. But to say that it causes cancer and emphatically state it causes cancer, not you think, you believe, you feel, your personal experience is, these people emphatically state that it causes cancer, but back it up with no evidence at all. And again, having lost a lot of friends and loved ones to cancer, most recently my beautiful mum, it is absolutely offensive that people spout this crap and that other people believe it. I mean, people can believe what they want to believe and you're absolutely entitled to it, and nobody has to believe what I am saying now, and that's absolutely fine. That's the way it should be. But as a nurse of nearly 25 years, an infection control nurse of 20, and having worked on haematology wards, and my wife having worked with cancer patients and palliative patients and in various aspects of healthcare, there is literally absolutely no evidence to back up these claims. And it's insulting that people even persist to claim that it exists. But if I'm wrong, show me the evidence. Because every time I say this, no one shows me anything at all. They just tell me to go and do my own research. I've done my own research. It'll be linked in my In Plain Sight, more nuanced follow-up to this video, because this is a bit of a motive, because it just really angered me. And it'll be in my Substack article, and you can study those papers and come to your own conclusions. But based on the research that I've done, there is no evidence at all. And these people shouldn't be allowed to spout this crap. But it makes them money, I guess. So